Saucier, and I'm here in an extra special session with fellow co-host of the Cycle Power Summit 2019 with Marc Sherman. So Marc has spent the last 4 years dedicated to forming Organic Conceptions, an organization that is uncovering the patterns, insights, and commonalities from couples who unexpectedly overcame infertility. In learning through these shared stories, he's able to provide couples with the critical emotional support and self-discovery tools that can dramatically alter their journey to parenthood and beyond. Marc, the work that you are doing totally gives me the chills. Thank you for joining me in this session to dig into it.
Thank you for calling me extra special and for having me. It's not often I get called that. So thank you. It's a huge pleasure, honestly, to be here and to bring some light to, this topic for sure.
Awesome. Marc, I think some of the most common things that women hear from other people when they're struggling to get pregnant, I know I did, of 7 years of suffering infertility, are just relax. It'll happen when you stop trying so hard, right? And then we hear these stories about couples who decide to adopt or, like us, give up and buy a 1-bedroom condo at the beach. Yeah. And then they get pregnant. So when I hear about the work that you have done actually documenting that these are not just coincidences, I was amazed. Can you tell us about how you begin to uncover this through your research?
Yeah, and I would just say it's so funny because what's not funny about this is these are actually the most annoying stories on the planet when you're struggling.
Oh, absolutely.
Just if my wife and I heard this story again, we were going to plow you over with the 18-wheeler. It's just, they're incredibly difficult to hear because in many ways, for my wife and I, it made us feel like we literally have created such a bad environment, too stressful, where we cannot conceive a baby. Like, what a really horrible thought that clearly it's you and the environment. And then number two, indirectly, Anna, and tell me what you think, but it almost indirectly tells you you need to give up on what you so desperately want in order to get this child. And when you see yourself building a family in a certain way, it's impossible. It would be ridiculous to attempt to try to think we can convince someone otherwise.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, these stories are just very difficult for people to hear. And sometimes even people that hear about what we're doing, they're like, that's not for me. But what I think the point is, and I'll let you comment, is there was so much more happening behind these stories, Anna, than the act of adopting, buying a condo, going on vacation. That psychologically, emotionally, the way we're thinking, the way we're acting, the way we're owning our journey, the way we're making sense of our journey, the way we're rationalizing our journey, there is statistically a change that occurs that can absolutely transform. And we really promote quality of life first, emotional health and well-being. No one can make the promise of conception, but clearly we can get you in a very positive place and connected. Exactly.
And that's a great point, that it's not just that they decided to adopt, but came to a place of making that decision okay, now this is the right decision for us, or, buying the condo, that it's not just adopt and then I'm going to get pregnant. It has to be the right decision for that couple. And there is a lot of process behind that, which I think is the main point of what you've uncovered.
That's it. And I just literally got off a woman who's gone through our program, and she described how she went from this place of fear and worry and anxiety and ruminations of all the what if scenarios. And she came to this place as an individual, but as a couple, there's a level of unity that starts to occur where they felt full. She said, I felt whole. We started to live all the things that were on the back burner of, we're not doing this until this happens. And they came back to each other, they came back to life, and they actually had a very successful outcome. But yeah, that's all we can hope to do, is bring people to that place of emotional health and well-being. And we know there's no question there's a connection into our reproductive health. If we're making decisions out of fear, worry, anxiety, and we're running out of time, and that's the mentality that can absolutely wreak havoc on our lives and certainly the quality of our reproductive health.
Right. And so you mentioned not feeling whole. I mean, I definitely went through that process of emptiness and of, there's no way that I could possibly continue living or be happy if this doesn't happen. So but how did you begin to see this pattern of, the importance of moving toward wholeness? That what fascinates me is that there's this actual process that helps people. This actual process that a person can be guided through in order to come to this place of wholeness.
Yeah, you can, and that's the thing. Through the research, and to answer your question, like statistically, and I will say this woman, Dr. Kate, who's a PhD in multivariate statistics and the research psychologist, she's the one that helped conduct I just became this person that said, this happened to us twice, where we became that annoying story, Anna. We became that on two, not just once, twice. And when you live something twice, you can't help but constantly reflect back and say, what happened? We lost years of our life as a couple, individually, the choices we made, the things we do, and living it twice, you just come to this point where it was not the act of adoption. Psychologically, emotionally, the way we looked at each other, the way my wife looked at her body, the way she felt she was someone that was a meaningful person that could add, that was valuable now without a baby. There was just our connection with life. There were so many things that were dramatically different. But when when we met Dr. Kate Webster and asked her to come along and help us statistically understand, is there a common thread that all these stories that are annoying, is there something more there that could emerge and help guide couples, help inspire them, help provide them the tools for emotional health and well-being? And she told me, Anna, to be very honest, there might not be. She said, when you enter into research, this was a biopsychosocial model of investigation that she used. She said, you have to be mature enough that even though you lived it and you have some sense that there was far more happening, there might not be. But the reality is that there was these 3 chapters that kind of emerged in these stories. And within those chapters, there's these 9, we use the word transitions, or these stages that couples move through. And I think an important thing to know is that you can't move someone forward until you know where they have been or where they are. And a lot of the program is to help normalize what they're experiencing. Say, that stage is me. So many women tell us, I thought I was broken to have that thought. And I spent years disappointed with myself that I was having those thoughts or those feelings. So I think a lot of what we need to do is, when you can help people see that there's this journey that's common statistically, you can then bring a sense of, oh my gosh, step 1 is I'm normal. Others have experienced this. I'm not alone. And when you can validate these powerful emotions, I mean, there's women that, let's just be honest, there's people that told us, why can low-income people conceive it easily? I have this beautiful home. I have everything set up. Or am I being punished by God? Or there's why is a woman at Target with their baby just doesn't look happy? Why can't she? I would do anything to have that baby. So there's this raw emotion, and until we can meet them and understand, validate what they're going through, but then you can start to unravel it psychologically. How do we get to that place? And I think a lot of the program is really designed to do that. It's normalizing, validating, and then together with good partners, how do we start to shift and empower couples to move forward?
Yeah, and I have dug in, and I have listened to a lot of your program, and having gone through this process myself or ourselves as a couple, but without a guide, we had to suffer through it ourselves. And I know a lot of people do, but I mean, it brought me to tears just to see that pattern. And I could see as I saw the process of the program, when I was going through these different things. And it was just incredible to think that other people don't have to just kind of stumble through that. But if there is a guided process, like when we think of other processes that have been created, like working through grief or working through an addiction, where you can see the end, if I can work through these things and come to, to meet these goals, I guess, if you will, of understanding myself and becoming whole and places of acceptance, then I have somewhere I'm going. Right?
It's true. The woman I just finished with, and she described it in that way, that it helped her know where she was, but it gave her some insight on where she wanted to be, but she felt there's so much social pressures, Anna, of what you're supposed to do, and you can't waste time. And that's why something like this takes courage and vulnerability to stop and connect individually, connect as a couple, start to trust our intuition, trust our values, and start to set a course that honors that. The idea of stopping the chaotic doing for some being time, it's not the easiest place for couples to get to, but she described it as just that. She could find herself, but then she said, I had some forward insight on where we needed to go. And knowing that that place is not a bad place, that for so many others, they actually found success as an individual, success as a couple, but many of them did have success relative to conceiving or building their families in other ways. That means just by pursuing that path doesn't mean it still can't happen naturally. If anything, when you become nurturing and loving and connected as a couple again, life throws lots of surprises at you.
Yeah, there sure are. Absolutely. Just as a teaser, I mean, and out of curiosity for people, like, what are these 3 main stages?
Yeah, the 3 chapters, and we labeled them. The first chapter is called the conception of doubt. And if you had to summarize this at the highest level, this is understanding of how, through these 3 transitions that we covered, do you essentially get to this place where women generally feel very diminished, feel broken, their sense of self is weakened, their self-efficacy, trust in their bodies weakens. They start to, in many ways, there's where you start to architect this story with many times a lot of false and limiting beliefs. It's where we quickly start to emotionally try to rationalize this and make sense of this. And it becomes this place that, at the end of the day, our sense of self is very diminished. We define ourselves by what's not happening. So this first chapter, the conception of doubt, at the highest level, really becomes the way we're starting to interpret what's happening to us. In what meaning are we giving what's happening to us? And the next chapter actually starts to talk about the way you then start to act and behave in the environment you create. So the conception of doubt is really, how do we get to this place where doubt becomes debilitating? It starts to steal what might be. And in many ways, we start to architect this story that's very much anchored in fear and doubt and worry and anxiety and what if scenarios. And I generally believe that the body starts to sense this and respond. Because Anna, in our society, we're far more planned than we've ever been. So when we say it's time to build that family, there's a lot of coordination and childcare and work and jobs. And so it's not abnormal to plan. But what happens is when we start to miss that window that became our expectation, it's amazing how quickly that early worry and concern could come to this place of moving very quickly into complete panic. And actually, for many people, before they even start building families, they've been told, clock's ticking, clock's ticking, clock's ticking. Am I putting my career too far ahead? Did I miss this window? So there's a level in our research that before you even start trying, there's a great level of worry.
So, in other words, you start thinking about things that are not happening become things that are not happening, create these stories about how we believe about ourselves. And is that right? So,
it is. It starts to be the way in which we're thinking about our journey, the way we're thinking about our bodies, the way we're thinking about past things that might have happened or not happened. And it starts to become this emotionally trying to wrestle with what's happening to me. And I think a lot of people just leave this chapter of our program saying, I finally know why I was there. I know why I was having that thought. But more importantly, our whole goal is to help once we connect with where they are, and there's that self-discovery, because we're going to give you the words and the language to actually understand and articulate what you're feeling, raw feelings, versus being able to dissect them and understand them, and then start to realize you have some choice. When that thought comes again, we give them the tools to start to understand how there's a choice and how you interpret it, the meaning you give it, and what you go do next. So yeah, that chapter 1 really becomes the way we're thinking about this journey that we're on.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's chapter 1. Then I'll just jump. Chapter 2, we called it, where couples, lose patience and become the patient. And this is not to say, and it's not the patient in a formal sense, because there's a lot of people that are using our program as part of treatment, and NAPRO doctor is doing great work. It's more of the patient mentality. You take on that identity, you take on your diagnosis. There's generally, every couple speaks to, they can spit out their statistic on their likelihood of, it's amazing how that statistic, whether it be based on a diagnosis or based on their age, but most people are living through some statistic, and it really starts to become an identity for them. In very much, there's an environment and a mindset that you create around the identity. So this whole losing patience to becoming the patient is more of the doing part. Now that chapter 1 is how do we get to this place emotionally, we're thinking a certain way, this is all the compliance, the obsessions of try this, look at this, you know, all the things. And we know these poor couples, there's an endless supply of stuff they're being told to do, to look at, to try, to eat, I mean, it's just, and that in itself could be very overwhelming. So this is really the place where people come where life becomes hard. When people complete this chapter 2, I've had so many say that was hard. That's a look in the mirror, because so many people, it's where you give up living because you're living to try. And you have that anger, that jealousy, that compliance of, we'll just try the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And this is where a lot of marriages get lost, people get lost. And it's a hard chapter for many people to face, because in many ways it's starting to look at this from a step back to say, holy smokes, what has life become?
Yeah, that really resonates with me. And there were a number of years where we were under treatment to try to figure out what was wrong, where I was having 3 ultrasounds a month. We were doing injections, you know, there's all these pills, and everything starts to revolve around those tasks and the sex, right? Your life, it just becomes a chore. Exactly. It's timed. It's everything is structured. And I can totally see how, I mean, thank God it almost brought my husband and I together for, you know, for whatever reason, I don't know, but I can totally see that how it can also pull people apart.
It is. And just so you know, our job in this program, the research, is not to judge paths or tell people what to do, but what it is going to do is there's a self-realization that couples come to that, hang on, we matter. Things I like matter. We as a couple in trusting our joint intuition matters. Our values matter. And I think that in the program, we share this example, which I'll do now, which is my wife. She became so obsessed about trying to figure this out. This became a massive puzzle for her. I'm not saying not me, but I mean, every day there was a new idea of this might be it. And one of the things that we came across was this idea of, you know, raw fish might not be good for us. So it was a very seemingly innocent decision to give up our sushi night. But I will tell you, that was our date night. And that was our Friday. It was our ride to our favorite restaurant. It was a conversation together. It was a level of connection and intimacy and unwinding. In couples, very easily, it would be selfish to have kept raw fish in our diet. If that was really preventing us from being parents, that was a no-brainer. But what happens is there's 50 to 100 seemingly innocent decisions that you start to make that over time, life becomes what you described. Mechanical, robotic, we're going through these motions, and any sense of us feeling excited and connected and things that just might make us happy. So I think what we're trying to do is help people to know where those places are and honor those. And at the same time, if there's certain things that just don't feel right, it's okay. Step away.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay, so now I'm really excited to hear about the stage 3.
Yeah, so stage 3, we called it the surrendering into life. I think what we try to be very cautious. This is, no one in any of our research gave up on their dream of becoming parents. We feel like it's an either or, Anna. It's like I either find acceptance and peace and trust, but I'm giving up on the dream, or I'm just head down, pushing through this at whatever it takes, any expense, to solve this and solve this now. And what we realize is that in the surrendering stage, in these 3 transitions that we covered, there's a level of couples halting, taking stock, emotionally connecting. There was this harmony that started to occur. This is where people got back to themselves, got back to life dreams. It was people that changed jobs, moved to different places, built the houses, did the things that were on hold. And for many, they also found their ability to love and nurture and parent in other ways. What happened in this last surrendering into life chapter is that statistically, it's where Kate and I, our heads were blown away, that the diminished sense of self that occurred in chapter 1 came back, where people felt full, they felt whole. And at the core of that is the web of identity. What defines you? What makes you who Anna is? It's made up of a whole bunch of pieces: your family, your friends, your work, your passions, your it's all these things that make you who you are. But when you're in the struggle, in the depths of the struggle, all those pieces are getting thrown by the wayside. They actually come back in this last chapter. Like this woman just said, I felt whole. We were good. We were giving back. I was in a job I love. We were building and I think for so many, it sounds so basic, but yeah, there was a level of coming back to themselves, each other in life. And that's what we kind of covered during that chapter.
Yeah, when in the midst of this struggle, it's really hard to believe. I think especially as a woman who, you have this, this was what I was created to do. Like my body, it's all created to create and to give life. And, and it's so easy for that to be the identity. And you talk about the web of identity, like I am mom, I am mother.
Sure.
But the truth is that, for I think I can probably say all of us, we have some other things that we can give to the world, and for me, it was really, I was able to find a passion in this fertility awareness and restorative reproductive health space. And very shortly thereafter, we got pregnant. There were a lot of other things going on with medical help and that, but I believe all of these pieces are vital, or at least connected.
They are, and we were talking earlier, but and I think that as people listen to Amy's interview, the CEO of Prove, her ability to articulate that when we are not in a good place emotionally, our emotional health and our physical health are so interdependent. And when she talks about progesterone levels and that cortisol starts to remove progesterone because cortisol's in this fight or flight mode, and how the imbalance of hormones. So there's no question. The reality is, though, Anna, it's easier said than done. It's of course,
absolutely.
Of course, this is in short-term temporary stress relief. Things help you for that hour, those 2 hours, but that next thought is coming back. And the question is, how do we handle it? How do we understand it? And how do we equip ourselves as a couple to manage a process? And for so many, Anna, honestly, so many people look back, and there were so many gifts that this time offered. Not this infertility, we're too quick to take on that label, but the delay in conception for so many. And I know life's easy in retrospect, like you're doing now, and all of us do that. But as you get enough of these stories together, you start to realize that for so many, it was a time to better communicate as a couple and learn tools. I had a woman in Australia said, I question how good of parents we could have been, because this struggle became the preparation. It taught us the tools, and others that weren't really where they wanted to be work-wise. And this doesn't mean they stop to make those changes. The question is, you keep making the best of this time and realize this time is special, and it could be such a great gift for couples. And yes, that finding that peace and that trust and still doing meaningful things during this time could have a profound impact on our lives. And I think when we all become parents, however that is, it's the struggling times that will help us better guide our kids, because the next struggle is right ahead. It's do we have the tools? Do we have the endurance? Do we have the communication skills to approach it differently?
Absolutely. And I will be forever grateful to my husband, who always encouraged, sometimes not even encouraged, but like forced us to be doing things even in the midst of all of the, the ultrasounds. And we would take a break and we would travel, or, in my mind, it was like, I can't start training for a marathon because, we got to be on this process. And what if we get pregnant? For me, everything was, well, what if we get pregnant? If we're going to book a trip to Rome, like, what if we get pregnant? Well, then we'll cancel it. Right. And so he was always the one saying those things. We can always make those adjustments, but we still have to keep living. Right. And
yes.
I'm so grateful for that. I don't think that I would have done it on my own.
It's living, it's thriving. It's just not, I think we try to move people from just getting by and helping, I had a woman say just the tears every month and not feeling good about someone else that might be expecting, a friend, and having that such strong anger and jealousy, to actually, she described it as, I'm truly at the bottom of my heart so happy for this person. And she said, just months ago, it's tough to get into that place. It's a process, it will take work, but it's important work to do. And it'll benefit you far greater than just the journey to parenthood. And yeah. I love hearing that your husband was so actively involved in a good coach, because men are interpreting this differently, you know?
Yes, and that is an excellent point that I wanted to ask you about, because you talk a lot about going through this program as a couple, and it sounds like, I mean, it is a fantastic program. I've looked at it a bit and wish that I had it while I was going through this process. But I think this is a little bit of a sensitive question, because a lot of guys struggle with getting into this like emotional space, right? And is this, you would talk about doing this as a couple, but how can we as women, as wives, effectively and sometimes it's gently or quietly invite our man into this journey to come into this emotional space in a way? How can we do that in a way that will be productive and healing, instead of, I mean, when you're struggling, it's so hard to do this in a way that's not like, okay, you have to do this because this is important, you know, so that we can have a baby.
No, Anna, it's brilliant. We just had a woman that's going through the program that asked to talk. My wife ended up connecting with her. And the first thing she had to say, if you're doing this as a to-do item to conceive a baby, don't do it. I mean, it's hard to say that, but if that's the mindset as another to-do item, there's 1,000 of them. If this is self-care, if this is, I'm going to own my journey and my journey will be unique and it's mine, and we're going to use this as a chance to grow and heal and connect. And that's a different mindset, and that mindset matters. So let's talk about, you know, I think, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that what a woman is experiencing through the struggle is obviously much different than what the husband, the man is feeling, and neither are right or wrong. And in the program, we're constantly saying, statistically, here, woman's here, and there's a level of urgency and worry and whatnot. And generally, there's a difference in where the husband, neither right or wrong, but like any good marriage, the inability to validate. I gotta tell myself this every day when I wake up, just validate, not have all the answers, but validate, I'm here, you're here, and to be able to have a dialogue that's deeper than just surface level. So many people say this helped us to address the topics that were there. They were in the room. We just didn't have the tools to go deeper into these discussions. So I think that it's okay that the journey is different. The level of urgency, like you described, I'm a woman, this is why I'm on the planet. The husband is absolutely going to be at a different place, but not the place that you might think, because we're quick to say he's not as worried. He's staying optimistic. You know, I felt all along that I wanted to be good support. Therefore, I didn't want to go deep into the negativity, but I was feeling that. And I had a lot of my own thoughts and a lot of my own anger and a lot of my own self, you know, am I disappointing her? So there's more to be seen than what's happening at the face value. And I think that we got to give couples a tool to communicate and engage. And, but I will say that, you know, if this is something that you're roping your husband into, then this has got to be, I like Holly, who we interviewed, who has amazing, great things about what she learned in Spice and her guide. And at some point in time, this has got to be, for me, if we had this, I would have had my life back. If I'm a husband, like my wife came back to herself where we were living and thriving and doing things again. And I think this could be an absolute opportunity for a couple to still stay connected and do the things they love to do. So hopefully it's just not another to-do item. And I think for some, I have a lot of women say they went through the program first, and then once they found themselves, they brought their, like, I can't wait to bring my husband in. But I think that they got to see this as a partnership, Anna. And if someone is really against that, I like Holly told me this, then there's probably other issues that are there. If someone's not willing to spend an hour a week to look ourselves in the eye, pour a wine, have some tea, and just emotionally connect with where are we in this and how are we feeling. And if that can't be done, then I would expect there's other things that should be looked at there.
I like that. So looking at it as, hey, I see this as an opportunity to like find myself again, to find some wholeness that I've been missing. Would you come and be on this journey with me?
Right.
Is that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's like one of the elephants in the room. This sucks. This is hard. And I'm every day, every minute ruminating about what if scenarios. And you're supporting me, but a lot of times this is early on in a marriage, Anne. I mean, think about, like, this is one of the probably the first really major kinks here in the road. And there's a choice. Do we just try to, like, hopefully this thing gets behind us, or we confront it? We get, like Brene Brown, like, right in the ring, and we go at it, and we come out better as a couple. So, hey, this does stink, and And for me, gosh, life was just upside down. The things we're trying, eating, doing, stand on your head, get home now, drink a bunch of caffeine before you. It's just, there's only good that would come out of a deeper conversation about what we're going through. And those tools and doing that in a time of crisis and great uncertainty is exactly what more couples probably need to have for, the next phase of life.
Absolutely. Wow. I love it. It's so powerful, Mark. I want to thank you so much for just guiding us through it. I know that this is going to speak to a lot of people in our audience. And so of all the things we've talked about, we're asking all of our, I know this is a bit of a different session, but we're asking all of our speakers and all of our sessions, what's your number one cycle power tip?
Yeah, well, let me just say one thing quickly too. There'll be practitioners listening to this too, Anna, and I think it's important. Doctors and a lot of the caretakers we've talked to, they struggle with how to best emotionally care for people. And it's a hard place. And I think that the idea of addressing the physical needs plus the emotional plus the spiritual allow us to create that harmony that will lead people to a better place. So I don't want to dismiss how we learn through our work that the suffering occurs at the woman's suffering, how the couple suffers. You forget that the family suffers as couples are withdrawing from family events and birthday parties, and people aren't sure how to say it, what to say, not give a suggestion at the wrong time. But then I think we're quick to forget that the community of providers, fertility care practitioners and others that care so much, that give their heart and soul, that there's a level of not sure how to best equip, and help in this way. So I just wanted to say that for other people that might be listening. So my one cycle power tip is that I get what it's like to be in it. And you want fixes, you want answers, you want to be told what to do. We've been trained as a society just to overcome resistance, work through it, stay firm, don't emotionally break. What if the answer is the complete opposite? And everything else in life, that might be the roadmap, that might be the recipe. But through all this research and all this stories, this idea of emotionally coming back to yourself in your relationship, and the thing that matters, and understanding where you are and doing this hard work. And like my wife said to this woman, owning your journey, knowing it won't play out like your friends or someone that this is yours. And there's a uniqueness to it that will be your gift. It will be who makes you who you are. It will define your character. And I just think that, with all the things people are trying to vet out, what I should do, not do, eat, drink, look at, is it possible that we encourage them to make some time emotionally as an individual and as a couple? And I think that, we hope people do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining this session with me, Mark.
It's an honor. Yeah. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate it. And thanks for your input that your own personal account, really helps as people, to help understand really what people are going through. So thanks for sharing part of your story.
Our stories are so powerful, as you have uncovered in your work.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.